All right, I'm here with my good friend, Georgie Martorano. Thank you for coming down and taking some time to chat with me. The thing that first connects us, right, is the Saloon restaurant, which the cat's out of the bag, that my book, Lying Down with Dogs, was inspired by the decade plus that I worked at the Saloon restaurant downtown. And I want to talk to you because you were there before me, and I have memories of you before I met you while I was there. I'll tell you about that. And the other thing that connects us is that we're both writers, and I have your book here, too. That you wrote.
Pain grows a platinum rose.
Right. Yep, I have that there, too. So the Saloon restaurant, when I worked there, I started there when I was 19 years old. I was transferred to Temple University. And Richie, the owner, God bless him, because the place is still thriving. I still love going there. It's got this energy. The food's still fantastic. And it's such for me, it's like going home. But I remember when I would be working there, Richie was omnipresent, right? You're married to a restaurant when you own a restaurant, and he's meticulous about that restaurant. It was the cleanest restaurant I've ever been in my life. So when he was missing, it was really obvious. And I remember everybody saying when I get to work, "Where's Richie? Where's Richie?" And they said, "Oh, he's out in Indiana, Chicago, wherever it is, he's going to visit Georgie." So we all knew of you before I knew you.
He was very, very loyal friend, ladies and gentlemen. Incidentally, I'm George Martorano. I did 32 plus years in prison, nonviolent first offender. If you were to do a movie, it would be multiple movies about what they did to me. But reference to the Saloon is right across the street from where I live. And if anybody ever been there, as soon as you walk into the Saloon, you see a copper pot.
Yeah.
Well, I bought that copper pot. I was 17 years old, and I walked into the Saloon. Saloon had just opened in '67, and I had no money, but I had an older girl I was seeing. She was like 19, and I went up to Richie with the pot. I said, "You like this pot?" I said, "It's an antique pot." He says, "Yeah, I like that pot." I said, "Well, you could have it, but I want dinner." And he said, "Okay." I said, "The girl's over, so could we have a couple beers too?" He says, "Yeah." So, and
Richie was your babysitter, right?
Yeah.
At one point, how old were you?
When I was a little child, I think 2 and 3, he used to hang with my uncles on the block, and my mother trusted him, and he gave me to him. He figured he was more trustworthy than my uncles. So that's how far I go back
Right.
with them.
And when you remember the Saloon in its heyday, because you have a little bit of a different experience than you were there when it started, and when I was there, they were doing a lot more corporate business and stuff, and so it had really expanded beyond the neighborhood. But when you were there...
Well, it actually started with one building. Now it has 4 buildings, the Saloon. And, it's just... we didn't have a full menu when we first opened up. Roast beef sandwiches, and we used to play some old classic movies and things like that. And but whatever they did, even from the start, it was always whatever they did was quality. Whatever they did, nothing had to be quality.
Right.
And it just evolved. It just evolved. So the November, which is a few days away now, it's 57 years in November.
I know. It's
57 years.
And still excellent. When I'm in there, the food is still excellent.
Well, it was known for good food. It was known for beautiful women that worked there, like yourself. So, but it's been part of my life. I mean, in and out of prison.
I write in my book about, I didn't realize this when I first got there as this young girl, but the women were part of the lure, and that's why we had so much male clientele, and with the men came the great tips, So it was more lucrative. When I got out of college, my first job, I made more one night a week keeping the Saloon restaurant on a Saturday night than I did, proportionally to what I got paid for my first job.
Still does well. I mean, they're back up to, had its COVID. I remember, we're going to talk about, we're talking about post right now. No, we're not talking about post. What's the word? Pre. We're talking about pre-Saloon right now. It just was amazing. I mean, you had every element. You had politicians, you had gangsters, You had all types of
doctors,
businessmen.
every sports celebrity, anybody
every
actor
sports.
that was in town. I waited on Bette Midler. I mean, Bruno Kirby. Everybody that was in town. Anybody that was anybody was in there.
Well, that's where you got your content for the book because,
Right.
I mean, I didn't get too much into the romance there because I was married and I lived across the street. And,
Well, that'd be tough.
yeah, and all the girls, before you were there, I used to take my children there. I used to take them early. You know, you don't want kids running up and down in the saloon. I used to take them there 5:30.
Right.
We used to eat, so a lot of the girls, my Francesca, who you know, she was a little baby, beautiful little baby. Me and my wife going. My boy, he just liked to stay home and play with his cars. He was a car nut and little cars. And I never seen a baby. We could take her to the restaurant. All of a sudden, the girls grabbed her, the saloon girls, and take her upstairs. We didn't see her no more.
You've done so many interviews now. I've watched a bunch of them on TV because, quite frankly, your life is fascinating. I mean, the fact that you survived what you survived, I was so, I didn't know this about you. I've heard your story firsthand, but when I listened to the interview on Wisecracker, I learned that you were only the fourth American to get the sentence you got, and you were different than the three previous people to get those sentences because you were a nonviolent first-time offender. But what's really fascinating to me, and I recommend anybody to Google George Martorano and listen to his story because it is truly fascinating. What I want to know is, what is in your Constitution? What is in your mental makeup that allowed you to not only survive, but to survive intact with all your marbles and to write and to educate people while you were in jail? What do you think, if you had to boil it down, helped you through those years of solitary?
Character way my father raised me. You know, 32 plus years and 5 years in solitary. But if you add up, I was all the worst penitentiaries. If you had, right now, the federal penitentiaries right now, ladies and gentlemen, are bad. They're literally killing fields. You've seen on the media with these gangs coming in from South America. But they had gangs from Mexico. They had gangs from Puerto Rico when I was here. When I left, all the Central American gangs. So it was nothing nice.
And you were in Leavenworth, you were in...
Well, the worst prison in America today, two worst prisons today are Marion, Illinois, and ADX in Colorado. But Marion was before Richie visited me every prison. You know, I got there, it was 370 the worst prisoners known to man, and I had more time than them. Getting back to your question, life no parole, they didn't want it was put on the books, and then it's called 848 CC, Continual Criminal Enterprise. It was put on the books, made into law under the Nixon administration, but they didn't use it. They thought it was too harsh. So then I come along, I think my indictment was under the Reagan administration, and there was three guys ahead of me that had CC, life no parole, and they were repeat violent offenders. One was the famous Nicky Barnes, Harlem drug dealer who turned to be informant. Then there was another friend of mine, Herbie Sperling. He didn't turn informant. He was a little kid driving for Murder Incorporated. Actually driving 17, driving Murder Incorporated around in New York. And another guy, Felix, I don't know his last name, friend of mine out of LA, he got killed in Leavenworth. So then I come along. I was the first person in the whole state of Pennsylvania to ever get that, and I was the fourth person in America to get that because they weren't using it back then. And my indictment was a terrible indictment. It was called, what's the correct name? Target. Worst indictment to have. I was the last, matter of fact, the last target indictment. Target indictment means, ladies and gentlemen, when they indict you, the top of the indictment, the first page, big letters, it says target. And who signs under that? Not the back page. Usually when you sign legal document, you sign on the back page. Right under the front page and word target, it was signed by the United States Attorney General. I think his name was French. So they had a plan for me. I didn't know that this plan was coming. They did everything they could imaginable to make me talk. I wouldn't talk. And then they wouldn't. You figure life, no parole is punishment enough. I mean, I'm coming home in a body bag. they wouldn't let up on the punishment. They kept me in solitary, and so I had to deal with all that. That was from the Justice Department. But then when I got to Marion, 1984, because it was the day before Thanksgiving, 1984, Marion prisoners were hated all over America because 2 months prior to walking into that hellish prison, they had killed 2 guards. I mean, killed them bad. A guy last name of Fountain, I don't know his first name, and the other guy is Silverstein, Steve Silverstein. So in other words, not only am I in the worst prison in the world, but I'm hated by every guard in America. And I had to do a few trips, one on a psychological evaluation. That's a whole nother story. And I had to come back on writ. Writ means when you pulled back into court, and I'm thrown in holes everywhere, and I'm a Marion prisoner, and they try to kill me at certain prisons. They really try to arrange to have me killed. I didn't even know them. They didn't even know me, but I was labeled a Marion prisoner. And it just didn't stop. I mean, for years and years and years, and then I figured, you know what? I'm going to change the course of everything, and I became such a positive force within a world of negativity, such a positive force by being a writer, mentor, educator. You know, I graduated over 8,000 inmate students.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And
but what changed for you? What was the moment that changed? Was it like prayer? What gave you the hope? What turned it around?
Well, Natalie, the worst thing you want to see in an individual's eyes is nothing behind them. I mean, no emotion.
Dead.
And they're just dead. And I met more than one in Marion. And I said to myself, I'm not going to let that happen to myself. Even many years went by, but they had dead eyes. The worst thing is they had no feelings and dead eyes. It's just terrible. And I had made it. That was one of the guys was Darryl Holmes. I used to be my workout buddy.
About him on one.
Darryl Holmes, yeah, he cut 3 people's heads off in the Colorado system. Cut a guard's head off, an inmate's head off, and a psychologist's head off. As a matter of fact, if you work for any prisons, federal or state, it is mandatory if you're a psychologist, you have to study his dossier, because he was such a mind force that he got into the psychologist's head and took a year. Psychologists used to interview him every week. He was on a 10-man hold. Every time he came out of the cell, he had 10 guards around him, 10, and he's chained. In a year's time, he went from 10 guards down to 2, and of course, of the psychologist's orders. He said, because he's not getting in the mood when 10 guys bring him to my office for me to study him. So when he got down to 2 guards, he told the 2 guards, go ahead and get some lunch or something. When he came back, his head was on the desk.
Oh, my God.
And, you know, Darryl told me, he says, I told him when I first met him to leave me alone. So that's why he has to be studied.
Wow. Now, what point in your prison career did you start?
That was my first novel, Pain Grows a Platinum Rose. I forget what prison. Incidentally, I mean, Nally, we're laughing before the show. I have a desire to write, like she's a writer. I've been doing filming basically nothing but filming since I'm out of prison. But I can't write unless I'm in a cell. So
you said you were going to call him.
I'm going to go down south with about 10 grand and find me a little county jail. I'm going to tell the warden, here's 10 grand. Just lock me up until I tell you, let me out.
Hey, my cousin Vinny. You know, he wanted to go to jail to go to sleep. So he can sleep in the cell in Alabama.
Maybe I'm crazy, but I really think about it.
That's where you can write.
I only know how to write in the cell.
So, you know, it's funny. So I knew of you when I worked at the restaurant. But then the first time I actually met you in person, you had probably just gotten out. And they were doing a little cooking class for kids across the street at the Fitzwater Cafe. I took my daughter and I came to the saloon and asked Richie if I could sit upstairs. The upstairs was closed and do some work while I waited for her. And you were having dinner with him downstairs. That was what, like 2015? When did you come home?
I came home 2015, but I didn't get back into the city until 2016. I did my acclimation to freedom in St. Pete, Florida. Just didn't want to hit a big city, things like that. And then months went by, not more than 3-4 months, and then my mother wasn't feeling good. As soon as I heard that, and that's when I came up to film.
So that's where we met in person. But then you were really supportive of my book, and I love keeping up with all the films. So tell us about These Ain't No Fairy Tales.
Oh, I bought a marquee for you. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen. These Ain't No Fairy Tales. It's on Amazon Prime, and it's doing very well. Got a 5-star review real quickly. And with an email, got a 5-star review with an email saying that this definitely should be a movie. I'm at a nightclub here in Philly, and it was a nice audience, and I just telling stories, and we went into 4 segments, and it's doing quite well. And from that, I have another movie coming out in 2025 with Netflix. We did a 3-hour special on the Philly mob. Very good film crew. They did Fear City in New York in 2022, their English film crew, and they did Get Gotti in 2024.
And he was your cellmate for years. I learned that on one of your interviews too, right?
Any stories you hear about John, ask me first. I know him very,
you got the
very,
scoop,
very
man.
well. When you live with a guy, first year we were in 22-hour lockup. That means you're in the cell with a guy 22 hours a day. So what do? You play cards, you talk. We did push-ups. We used to play gin, and he was a better gin player than me. I think when he finally went home after 2 years, a little past, I think I owed him like 50-some thousand push-ups. But he was a character. And, of course, he was only out there 2.5 years, came back on another indictment. That's why I didn't go back to the life, because... you get a young guy, he wants to be cool, and he wants to be a gangster in a mob, and then the FBI put him in the back seat of the car and say, you're getting life. Guess what?
Right.
So I'm not going to go back to that. I'm going to get ratted out and die in jail.
Right, as said by one of the original OGs. Yeah. So what is, like, now that you have become such a creative force, what do you dream for yourself? What do you want from the movies? You want to share your stories? Because they're fascinating stories. I mean, I can't even take listening sometimes when I hear your interviews about solitary and what it was like in there for days on end, and it's like the worst possible thing I could think of.
Well, crazy as it sounds, a year in solitary is 6 months. Mentally, it's like 6 months. Because it's such regimental, such routine that it goes by. You just got to keep your mind busy and your body busy. I've seen guys actually die. They get on that bunk and they don't come off that bunk in solitary. And I've seen them actually skin turn gray and scaly. And matter of fact, I made a golden rule, and I taught it to other prisoners. After breakfast, I used to get my mattress and fold it over and tie it with sheets and put it up against the wall. It was like a chair. And I used to get off the bunk. You got to get off the bunk. Then I would, at least 8 hours, where I wouldn't touch the bunk. And then, after dinner, and I put it back. So you have to have a routine. You have to, because your mind will snap. And a lot of them, the guys are crazy to begin with. Mm-hmm. They're crazy to begin. I mean, the stories are unbound. I mean, but and now we still incarcerate in the federal system close to 300,000, and it's all the maximum penitentiaries are all gang infested. I don't know how these guys are even going to let them out. And now you have this: if Trump wins, they're going to mass incarcerate all these other gangs, and I just don't know. The prison, really, I know federal prison where I was a mentor educator. There's no way they're going to hold it. There's no way, unless they put them in military bases and something like that. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I'm glad that I don't have to figure out those answers. But anyway, so when we talk next time, because we're going to do this in two settings. Right. When we talk next time, we'll get into more about.
Well, we talked about pre-Saloon, which I love.
And what my experience was there.
Right.
It's not anything near as fascinating as the stories you have, but but there's some funny stories that ended up.
And you don't know Bob. You didn't work. Did you work with Bobby?
No, he
Worked
had already
with Bobby.
passed away before.
Yeah, Richie's brother Bobby. He was a character. He was unbelievable.
The place was filled with characters, and that's where we should pick up when we start again.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank
All
you.
right.